What's the most shocking thing you found in your spouse's possessions? Not safe for work. A notebook full of beautiful sketches of trees, rivers, landscapes, animals, and people. He didn't tell me he was an artist, so I was a bit shocked to find out that he was so talented. When my husband passed away in a workplace accident, he was in another state. When I got his belongings, there were answering machine messages from a woman thanking him for being so amazing. And for dinner, etc. Then on his computer was emails and text messages from several women. I was pregnant and dealing with his death already. Then suddenly I had this anger at him that I could obviously do nothing with. Everyone told me you can't be mad at a dead person. But it was confusing. A rubber crab. My wife is freaked out by crabs. Apparently her mom has been hiding it in her stuff for years to scare her, and has become a game between them of hiding it somewhere the other person will eventually find it. Occasionally I'll be looking for something and stumble across it in a new place. First time I found it was in the dog treats 2 years into our marriage, and was very confused because she had not informed me of their game yet. My late wife's wedding ring. It was a beautiful ring, and she was despondent for losing it. It meant so much to her. She tried to backtrack her steps, which is how we ended up dismantling the kitchen sink. Finally, I declared it gone, and got her a new ring. It was nice, and had a more valuable stone. But she loved her first ring and missed it terribly. A few years later she died. A few weeks after her death I realized that our big king-sized bed was making me depressed, so I got a queen-sized bed and got rid of the king. It was a big and heavy bed that we never moved. So when I took it apart, I found her engagement wedding set lodged between the bed leg and the wall. She had obviously put it on the side table and knocked it off without realizing it. That was about 13 years ago now. The ring, and her box of ashes, sit on a shelf in my home office. I've remarried. My wife and I just celebrated our 10th anniversary. My late wife and I were married for 21 years. I am currently cleaning out the attic and getting the house ready to sell due to divorce after 40 years of marriage. Husband cheated twice, and found a box of his things from before we met, school report cards, Boy Scout crap, Archie comics, and a handwritten letter from his older sister who apparently gave oral sex to my husband and his best friend when he was in high school. She wrote that she wanted him to think of her every time any girl ever went down on him. And now her lack of warmth towards me throughout our marriage makes more sense. Update: I talked to him this morning. I asked him why he never told me, and he said he was deeply ashamed. He said he didn't want me to think he was like some cliché southern trailer trash chick. Some other details: he wasn't drunk, but he and his friend were high. Weed. He said he did not feel like a victim because he enjoyed it. He said he did not feel forced. He also said he felt like a passive participant. I asked how he could continue to maintain a relationship with her, and he said he was always worried that she would tell me. Which makes me wonder if all the financial assistance we gave her wasn't some kind of blackmail. He told me she used to cook meals for him, make sure he had clean clothes, and go to his baseball games, which his parents never did. His father was in prison for a time, and his stepmoms were always unreliable. Sister was a positive, loving person to him as a child, and she gave up having a normal teenage life to take care of him. He was more emotional than I have ever seen him. I encouraged him to get therapy, but he said he's too old to get any benefit from it at this point in his life. A list of reasons why she should leave me and why the guy she was cheating with was better than me. A short note I had written her on our third date. Apparently I was waiting in her car for her to come out of work, so I wrote a short note about how much fun I am having dating her and how gorgeous she always looks. It was late in the evening, so I stuck it in her sunglasses case for her to find at a later time that week. Okay, this was like from 15 years ago. Damn, I was romantic. 6 credit cards in my name I didn't apply for. New accountant pulled a Columbo and busted the soon-to-be ex after discovering $60K in hidden CC debt. Cut up all the cards in her wallet right there in her office and handed me the biz card of an attorney client she recommended. "You'll be glad you did," was all she said as I got up to leave. She's still my accountant after 23 years. A small plush lion keychain. When I first started dating my husband, 8 years ago, I gave him a lion keychain that I had as a stay-safe present while he went out to sea on the naval ship. This was my first time experiencing him going out to sea, so I was worried, and the present gave me a bit of solace while he was away. Furthermore, he explained to me that the lion reminded him of me because of my wild hair. Not that long ago, he was cleaning his backpack out from work on the kitchen table, and to my surprise, I saw the lion keychain with the rest of his stuff. I told him how shocked I was that he still had that lion, and in which he just replied, "I mean, yeah?" He then explained to me that the lion keychain has been in his work backpack all this time, and he has taken it on deployments/underways too. So that is the most shocking thing I found in my spouse's possession. A small lion plush keychain that I gave my husband 8 years ago as a stay safe present. My ex used to keep water bottles filled with vodka in her purse. She worked at a daycare. My ex-husband had tubes of fake blood. I thought it was weird. I found them stuffed in the closet. I didn't say anything because it was not far off from Halloween. Our marriage was over and I caught him cheating. I decided to leave. I went back to get some belongings and he staged an accident with the fake blood on the kitchen floor. He was a freaking nut job. To make me feel bad for leaving, he waited until I showed up and had an open bottle of Tylenol, rolling eyes face, and fake blood all over his body as if he killed himself. I banged on the window and told him to get his ass up and stop playing stupid freaking games. Just like a miracle by God, he started twitching and the life came back into him. Ha ha ha. He crawls to open the door mumbling he needs to go to the hospital. I step over him and get my shit. I find the tubes of blood thrown in the bathroom trash can and threw them at him on the way out. When my husband passed, I found a garage door opener in his car. We don't use one and neither did his work parking. I have no idea what garage it opens. Cigarettes. I needed an ink pen and I knew she had one in her purse. She doesn't smoke, but her new boyfriend thought it was sexy. I found a small thin rod that was attached to a plastic base when we were moving from our apartment to our house. The metal rod portion was covered with a thin plastic sheath. For all the world it looked like some sort of kinky toy, which brought up the question, why have we never used this? My first thought was that maybe it was something she had used anally. I was stupidly apprehensive about anal play for the first few years we dated, and in that time she had kind of cooled on it, so nothing major ever happened on that end. I decided to try and be coy and showed it to her and asked if she wanted to take a little break, wink wink, and she busted up laughing. My wife has to take daily HGH injections, and it turns out that what I thought was a sex toy was an agitator that was part of mixing her meds together on a delivery system she used before we started dating. She was thoroughly amused and spent the rest of the night asking me if I thought various objects were toys as well. An Excel spreadsheet of all previous sexual partners with stats/scores for each based on different criteria. He is a D&D nerd and it almost read like a character sheet. I had top score, but still disturbing. His fake teeth. Had been together a year and lived together 2 months. He hadn't told me as was embarrassed, but didn't change the way I felt about him at all. Just had to reassure him that it isn't embarrassing. Not a spouse, but a roommate. My old roommate, who worked in construction, left a continuing learning binder that he was supposed to bring to work that day on the couch. My boyfriend went to move it to his room and a piece of notebook paper that was stapled together fell out of it. I can't remember what was on the front of it, but it was really ominous and hinted that it was a suicide note. Panicked, I was like, just open it. When my ex and I lived together, I found a box with a single set of dishes under his side of the bed. When I asked him about it, he said he was keeping them just in case he decided to break up with me so that he could leave at the drop of a hat at any given moment. I remember the conversation. He seemed so nonchalant about it all. Turned out to be a total sociopath. Every single scorecard from the MechWarrior game he plays at Dragon Con. There are hundreds of them. Rare Game Boy games. When we moved in together, she knew I was bringing my workshop, console repair, to the basement and said she has some games in a box around there somewhere. She had nearly $1,000 worth of Game Boy games, a PS2 and Wii collection, among other stuff. She admitted that she never knew you could sell your games back to the stores, so when she finished playing them they went to the basement. Ex-husband now. When moving into the house we bought after getting married, we were sorting through his boxes to see what to keep/throw out. Found a book called something like How to Succeed at Group Sex. Lol. I was afraid to ask questions at that point. There was an old report that he had written in probably the 3rd or 4th grade, which would have been the early 90s. It was about stallions, because Bill and Ted, I'm assuming, and on the first page it said wild stallions' natural enemies are wolves and semi-trucks. Oh, that poor man. The kids absolutely loved the entire report and they still haven't let him live that one down. He's lived on a farm his entire life and knew nothing about horses. A collection of rare coins from his grandmother stashed inside a Care Bear tin. A credit card I didn't know about. She used it to spend money on boyfriends. Okay, hear me out. I never go through my SOS phone. I haven't before this and I won't in the future. Okay, so, rewind back to 2011, fresh out HS, dating the girl of my dreams. We're hanging at her house, just chillin' and passing time, and while she's in the shower she gets a text. No biggie, happens all the time. But another comes through. And another. All in rapid succession. So maybe it's serious. I look at her phone and the name is Matt. Matt was her most recent ex. Still in my dumbassery I think, okay, maybe something happened with his family, they're close. I open her phone and I see cool, I didn't want ex coming anyway. The frick? So I looked. And sure enough I'm gonna tell him the beach trip got called off. We're leaving in like an hour and he'll go home. Oh, okay. So she got out of the shower and I just held up the texts. OFC her first go-to was how dare you look at my phone etc etc etc. Here's the kicker. She still went and tried to frick Matt that day. She hit bad storms and crashed her car off a very tall off-ramp. She and her friends are all lucky to be alive. But what did they do? They called me and blamed it on me and my bad vibes. Meanwhile I was asleep on my couch stoned as shit watching Inception. Frick you Ashley. And your shitty friends. A collection of dolls. Like hundreds of them, all types, most made of cloth/stuffing, some plastic, some glass, some Beanie Baby style, but all human, no fantasy or animals allowed. Apparently she had been collecting them as a child and kept it going. So when we visits a new city, country, she will get a doll or something that is from that area. We dated for like 4 years before we got married and I didn't know she had this many. Her apartment just had a room that she called the doll room and I never really questioned it. Now I have a room I call the collection room so I don't have to explain to people why I have hundreds of dolls and that my lovely wife is not creepy despite having tiny figurines. So I didn't feel as weird springing on her my massive comic book and Star Trek collection. Our kids are going to have to deal with some shit when we die. Ex-boyfriend had a tin full of his toenail clippings that he for some reason saved. There. I said it. I might hurl again. His ex-wife's wedding gown. Apparently he had used it for a Halloween party and then stashed it away in the attic. A child I didn't know about. Didn't live with us, apparently she had been married before and had a kid she ditched with a dad. Never told me about it. Found out one day when I opened the mail and a letter from another state came about repaying the kid's government assistance. My wife has a used heroin needle. She says that it's the needle her mother overdosed with. I noticed it about 20 years ago when I was sorting through shit. Found a random needle with no cap and kind of freaked out. It now has its own sealed case so it can't stab anyone. My wife was packing up a bunch of my old music equipment during our last move about 15 years ago. She found a cluster of about 20 pairs of women's underwear in the back of a burned-out old PV guitar amp. I definitely had some explaining to do. They were, technically, mine. Not because I wear women's underwear. And not because I've got some kind of panty fetish. I used to live in a party house and shit got crazy a couple of weekends in a row where the girls at the party disrobed and left their underpants behind during some drinking game. I remember picking them up and putting them in the back of the amp. Mostly because I was a drunk, lazy 20-year-old. I hadn't really intended to keep them, but I guess I never got around to tossing them out. And there they stayed until my wife found them years later. It made for a pretty absurd Saturday morning when she found them. A creeper van. When we first started dating there was always an unmarked white van parked somewhere around his apartment. As a woman who values her safety, I stayed well clear of it. Come to find out 3 to 4 months and that it's his, which he used to drive his stuff across the country when he moved here. He doesn't drive it, but kept having to move it. He kept getting chalk lines on his tires by the local traffic cops. Someone kept reporting it for not moving, despite the fact he had nowhere besides the street to store it. He didn't want to tell me about it. He thought it would make him look creepy lol. He only told me when I eventually let slip I thought it was sketch. He ended up selling it to buy my engagement ring. Probably the 3-year dead rat in half a jar of mayonnaise. Yeah, definitely the 3-year dead rat in half a jar of mayonnaise. Don't think I've ever found anything shocking. There is something I worry about my husband and kids finding though. I was very mentally unwell about 7 years ago and was convinced I was going to die, so I wrote my husband and children each a letter telling them how much I love them and a few of my crazy ramblings. I also thought I could time travel at the time so I can guarantee something about that is probably in there, then I hid them. I was in a dissociative state though and my memory of that time is so foggy I have no idea where I hid them. I've searched and I can't find them anywhere. My ex, I found a noose. He said he would use it on himself. He turned out to be the scariest person I ever came across. A disturbingly detailed drawing of Edward Scissorhands with fanfiction of some sort written on the back, not a significant other but a fling of sorts. Nothing, and honestly that was kind of surprising. My wife died unexpectedly at home, very young, and her parents don't live in town. Because of that, I didn't want her parents to think anything at all was suspicious so I let the cops toss the house. They were reasonably polite about it, but still. Cops found nothing but her pot pipe. I knew about it, but I don't smoke at all, so I literally laughed in the cop's face when he confronted me. I said something to the effect of "What are you going to do, arrest her?" The pipe was clearly in her items, not a shared space, and I knew there was no way it had any fingerprints or other attachment to me. Anyways, the look on the cop's face, He did not like being laughed at, was what I think of when I hear about spouse surprises. My fiancée and I broke up after months of her being emotionally and verbally abusive, promising to change but never changing and in fact getting worse. When she moved out, I went through her books to donate them. There was a paper inside one, used as a bookmark, and it had a list that she made before we got together of qualities and traits that she was looking for in a partner. Almost all of it described me. Even the part that said something like, "When we have a disagreement of opinion, he stands up for what he wants." It's so interesting how people think they know what they're after, but when they get it, they don't actually want it. Not me, but I found naked Polaroid pics of my mom and her boyfriend when I went to get a comb from one of mom's bedroom drawers. The babysitter wanted one, so I offered to go get it. I was in 3rd grade. A partial necklace. My husband at the time fell in our glass shower, shattering it, and I took him to the hospital. I was at work when it happened. I smelled alcohol on him and he wasn't supposed to have alcohol at all, medication, bipolar, and doctor's orders. He denied and told hospital staff he wasn't drinking. We spent all night in the hospital and come home to a bloody and glassy crime scene. I'm cleaning up the shower and find part of a silver necklace. He did not wear jewelry ever. He flipped out and accused me of putting it there to cause issues. I did have trust issues. Well, he successfully gaslit me and I let it go. Then about a month or so later I find evidence of cheating. He went through a Taco Bell drive-thru and befriended a 19-year-old girl. I was 24 at the time, in great shape and the breadwinner. He potentially drugged her and had her in the shower with him, and she confirmed it was her necklace, that they were drinking, and that he told her we were already divorced but cohabitating until the lease was up. I mean, we had pictures of us together everywhere in the apartment, so she learned a lesson too, and I wasn't upset with her. But I kicked him out and started the divorce process the day I found out, of course. Married 16 years. Putting away laundry and there is a piece of paper that had reasons why monogamy was unnatural and unrealistic. How marriage is basically a scam. Lovely evening that was. Not a spouse but an ex of mine. On the day I kicked him out I was removing his things when I found hidden bottles of piss in the back of the closet. Naturally horrified I started checking, and sure enough I found even more behind the couch, the curtains, the radiator. There was piss hidden in bleach bottles and under the sinks in the back of the cabinet. I found one in the freezer, and since I was throwing out my entire fridge retching, I'm gonna assume there too. No idea why to this day. None. Zero. No hint, no weird sexual hint, absolutely nothing. Also found a hidden box of condoms in my bedroom. His co-worker's nudes. I was surprised to find my wife still had the box of her mom's cremation ashes. She had received it in the mail and tucked it into the back of a cupboard, unopened, and forgot about it. She still has it now. I have the ashes of 7 loved ones and had a very difficult time dealing with the grief and loss several years ago. I would get drunk, put party hats on myself in the urns, and have drunken tea parties with them. It was a weird and dark time in my life, but it helped. I bought my then girlfriend, now fiancée, a cloner Willy. It's a mold to make a dildo out of myself. It glows in the dark and vibrates. I did it as a joke. We laughed, good fun. She laughed hard while I tossed it and gave her the real present. 2 years later I needed my birth certificate, couldn't find it, so I looked in her drawer and there it was, still glow in the dark blue, and looked like it took a beating, like the original. Love that girl. All sorts of shocking, at the time, stuff. He had huge bag of women's underwear and shoes, bestiality DVDs. On the computer was his login for a bestiality forum, evidence that he was organizing a hookup with at least one guy. He was really keen to take it up the arse apparently. There was also a letter telling him not to worry and that she'd taken care of it and had an abortion. He also had online dating profiles, which probably isn't surprising or shocking after reading the above. Ex-wife, found her burner phone. I'd been paying the cell service, and at that time you'd get a printout every month in the mail of phone calls etc., which is another story. On this cell phone was a bunch of dudes she was talking to behind my back, also videos of the guys. I wanted to puke. Some of my nice underwear. I left it at his place after sleeping over and forgot about it. He washed it for me and just kept it in my sleepover box. I keep pajamas and some regular underwear just in case I sleep over. I was quarantined once and had no clean clothing, never again. I was shocked when I found it, as my set at home was incomplete. He even commented on that. I guess he never looks in that box. I think he was as shocked as me.